Welcome to MediaMelanieTV. Today I'm back to talk about Dexter Resurrection on Paramount+. Season 1, Episode 5 is called Murder Horny, and yes, it is just as twisted as it sounds, and this episode marks halfway through this first season of the latest spin-off in the Dexterverse, and I've got to say, out of Dexter Original Sin, New Blood, this is hands down the best and feels so authentic to the Dexterverse as a whole, and I am so here for it. My very first initial reaction and vibe check here, the fact that this episode closed with a needle drop from the band Princess Goes. If you did not know this, that is Michael C. Hall's band, and I've actually had the pleasure of seeing them live here in San Diego. I actually wore my Princess Goes shirt today. I have another one. Unfortunately, it's not clean, but it was so interesting to watch Michael C. Hall in a completely different role and venue as the lead singer of a band versus the lead of a TV show. So if you haven't listened to Princess Goes, I do recommend it. That moody and synthy vibe that they bring is really a perfect match for this noir-style comic book vibe that we're getting from the season so far. They are fully leaning into all of the darkness. This episode hit the gas pretty hard, including some callbacks to bowling. Now, that's something that we've seen in the original Dexter and also mentioned in Original Sin, so I thought that was funny and a subtle way to really tie in something that's been a little bit thematic in all of these Dexter shows. And Michael C. Hall as Dexter just feels more mature. His performance is so layered, and we're getting to see more inside of his head and all of these things that he's carrying and struggling with, namely the fact that he's craving connection, and that's where everything with Mia/Lady Vengeance comes into play in this episode. But most importantly, Harrison and Dexter were finally reunited, and it took a little bit to get there, and something I didn't see coming was Dexter taking that watch and planting it in Mia's apartment to make it appear as though she was actually the one who killed Ryan, to take that suspicion of guilt off of Harrison. Genius work here. And then that really opened the door for Harrison to allow Dexter to apologize and reconcile with him. And the way he reached his hand across the table at the end, this father-son moment. Now, I haven't traditionally been a huge fan of Harrison, but I'm not minding him as much this season, and I think they're blending his storyline in a more authentic way. So watching these two come back together and realizing that they do need each other was actually quite pleasurable to watch. There was just so much depth and growth on both sides of that, and the reconciliation felt real and authentic. So shout out to the writing and directing for making that come across in a way that didn't feel too contrived. Now, speaking of other needle drops here, we also got Thievery Corporation and Pussy Liquor by Rob Zombie. The music in this episode was really top notch. And of course, as I mentioned, it culminated with the Princess Goes song there at the end. And by the way, that song is called Eat in Eraser. That final musical cue was really just the perfect blend of personal and thematic closure, something done so well. I'm always impressed with the way they're able to work music into some of these shows as a device for storytelling and also just setting that vibe. So my biggest highs from this episode, definitely the reconciliation between Harrison and Dexter. I liked seeing them come back together. And it is so interesting to see the duality of how Dexter and Harrison each deal with what they are going through. Now, Dexter will never be like Harrison. He's never going to feel the guilt or PTSD that Harrison did after killing Ryan. And that's where they really differ. But I think now they're able to really see each other for who they are and have more of an understanding for why each one of them does what they does and feels the way that they feel. And just the protective nature of Dexter planting that watch. And I don't know, maybe you guys saw it coming when Dexter took the watch from Harrison. If so, let me know in the comments, but I completely did not pick up on that. And I love that Dexter had that insurance policy and was able to seamlessly incorporate it into his plan to get Mia arrested. And I was also surprised he didn't kill her. But at the same time, as Dexter mentioned, it would be highly suspicious if the new guy who's showing up at Leon Prater's serial killer dinners just happens to come on the scene and then all of a sudden, oops, Lowell's gone, Mia's gone. But at the same time, her getting arrested is almost akin to her being murdered. So regardless, I do think Leon is probably going to have a little bit of suspicion and like, hey, what's going on with my serial killer crew here? And I'm wondering, will he begin to suspect Dexter or Red as he knows him? I mean, Leon has the Bay Harbor Butcher's actual blood slides and knows of the Bay Harbor Butcher. I think it's only a matter of time until the pieces come together. I'm not sure exactly how, but having Charley on his payroll definitely makes it so there's a possibility this will get uncovered. Charley does all of the dirty work, so surely she's going to dig in a little bit more now that Mia is in jail. Now, another question, I enjoyed Charley going to see Mia in jail. Is she going to take her out? She mentions, we'll make your stay as short and comfortable as possible. Does that mean they're going to be hiring somebody to kill her in prison, or they will actually believe what she says and that she won't cause any trouble, won't cast any suspicion upon Leon, and just let her live? I would find that hard to believe, just given the nature of this being a serial killer dinner party and not wanting to have any possible loose ends that could implicate Leon in being connected to all of these killers. And speaking of Leon and the fact that he has those Bay Harbor Butcher blood slides, Dexter orders another case of blood slides and is like, hey, I'm going to need a bigger box, as he's putting Lowell's trophy into there. Is it too obvious that he is ordering this? Shouldn't he perhaps be, I don't know, buying it from a store under a fake name and using cash? I'm just kind of wondering if that will come into play again. And I also thought it was funny seeing him considering putting the slides in the air conditioner, but there not being enough room. So instead he puts them in that hole in the wall. And along with the whole Leon storyline here, I thought it was funny they incorporated Leslie Stahl to interview him about him being this philanthropist, self-made billionaire, and an orphan on top of it all. And Leon is a big supporter of the NYPD, and Leslie Stahl's asking him, with all of the things going on and situations with the police right now, why do you still support this? And that's where he's able to sort of tell his story about being an orphan and all the good things he's done. Ironic he's supporting the police, though, because he's literally harboring serial killers and collecting their trophies, which is sort of a hero complex thing, which also comes into play because Wallace's partner actually calls out, hey, you were right when it comes to light that Lady Vengeance was actually the killer of Ryan, because she had thought this was somebody that actually has a hero complex. She just happens to have the wrong person. It was a huge misstep of Mia to admit to Dexter that she doesn't have a code. Obviously, she wasn't expecting Dexter to turn her into the police, but it seems to me she probably should have kept that a little bit more under wraps, and perhaps this would have prevented the whole situation in the first place. And I also thought it was really funny and a high from the episode when Mia calls Dexter a tease. She's obviously very into him. They go bowling, they go on this wine date. And the way Dexter is frantically trying to talk her out of doing this menage a trois killing situation, she should have probably known then that there was something else going on here. And yeah, there was obviously this connection between Dexter and Mia, but the title of this episode being called Murder Horny and the way that Mia says that, I just think was really well done and incorporating a little bit of humor into an otherwise very dark episode. And that whole performance anxiety joke I just think was also really great. There were not a lot of lows from this episode for me. I think if anything, a lack of Batista. We did end up seeing Angel at the end when he's watching the news and sees that Ryan's killer was in fact Lady Vengeance. I am loving the Angel Batista of it all being on the trail of Dexter and Harrison. And I wouldn't mind seeing more of him in every single episode, but at the same time, they don't want to make it too over the top because there were other plot lines in play here. But the cat and mouse game of it all, I love it. And I'm really hoping we get to see Masuka and Quinn back working with Angel to figure out that, okay, this actually was not Lady Vengeance who killed Ryan, and go back to the initial suspicion that potentially Harrison or Dexter had something to do with it. And just circling back to the beginning, Harrison's shock over the fact that Dexter was alive in the first place. He's like, wait a minute, I shot you. And then, of course, Dexter goes on to explain the fact that it was cold outside. It slowed his blood down enough so he didn't end up bleeding out. But also it reminds us, Dexter mentions, this has only been a week since he was in Iron Lake. And a lot has happened in this week. In such a short period of time, we're already halfway through the season, which speaks to the solid momentum we've got building here. And the metaphor of that ticking watch in the first place, that was something I mentioned in my last video, which was this sort of audio cue for Harrison's guilt. And Dexter having taken that watch not only to plant it in Mia's trophy box, but also as a metaphor for literally taking that weight off of Harrison's shoulders. Very smart. And also just how endearing it was and sharing his experience with the Trinity killer and how he made a mistake and that actually led to Rita's death. That accountability and ownership of his actions felt very authentic. And I think that is really what allowed Harrison to let forgiveness into his heart for Dexter. And hearing "You're All I Have" just really hit home for me. It gave me goosebumps now that Harrison and Dexter are reunited, are back together, especially because I've really come full circle on Harrison as a character. And I'm interested to see exactly how they're going to take their very different views of guilt and killing and meld them together and move forward as father and son. And is there a potential that Harrison could help Dexter with something? Maybe. But I also think that Dexter has this protective feeling and vibe for Harrison. And I'm hoping that he doesn't put Harrison in another situation that is going to give him literally PTSD. And just something else I'm kind of curious about. Something in the way that Leon demanded Charley go take care of this and has her on his payroll for that very reason. There was sort of this look on Uma Thurman's face as she walked away. Is there a potential that she ends up taking Leon out or does something she's not supposed to do? What if she ends up going to one of the killers, for instance, maybe Dexter, and she figures out that he's not Red the Dark Passenger, that he is the Bay Harbor Butcher? Could they potentially work together in some way? I don't know that there would be a very strong motive to take Leon down, except for the fact that maybe she feels like she's a burned out employee. I mean, she went to Harvard after all, and she could probably be doing something better for herself, but I also imagine the paycheck is pretty good. So I think my biggest questions moving forward now. Is Mia going to realize that Dexter was actually the one who turned her in? Because seriously, what are the odds of the police coming during this crime right after she was hanging out with him? And he very clearly had some qualms about them committing this rideshare murder together. And if she does figure it out and she tells Charley, is that what's going to kick off Charley's suspicion and investigation into Red, where she finds out that he is in fact posing as the Dark Passenger, but is actually the Bay Harbor Butcher? But there's also the chance that Mia ends up getting killed in prison because Charley and Leon don't want any loose ends. Which way do you think it's going to go? And another thing, how long is Dexter successfully going to be able to hide from Batista now that Batista is hot on the trail of Harrison and Dexter and Harrison are reunited? I'd imagine it's only a matter of time until we see some sort of showdown between the two of them, and I cannot wait. I mentioned in my last video, I think there's definitely a strong chance that Angel could end up on Dexter's table at some point, whether it's here in season 1 or beyond, because I also think they kind of need Angel here for the story, for the person who knows who Dexter is and tracks him down now. Maybe Angel ends up working with Wallace. What if there's a world where he ends up working with Charley? Now that would be crazy. Probably a little bit unlikely, but you never know. And I also feel like Dexter is not necessarily coming into a redemption arc, but we've seen a lot of growth from him this season already in terms of choices that he's made to not kill somebody, the choice he made to not kill Mia and just turn her into the police, albeit he was doing it for somewhat selfish reasons because he didn't want to draw more attention to himself as the new guy at the serial killer dinner when all of a sudden Lowell's gone and Mia is dead or turned into the police. And just some final thoughts here. I think Dexter is truly trying to do better, and that is coming across very well. I actually like the direction the relationship with Harrison and Dexter is going so far. And a lot of this in this episode wasn't about satisfying Dexter's urges because he actually didn't commit a killing. It was more about coming back together with Harrison and protecting his son. He's putting his role as a father first for once, and even Harry praises him for doing the right thing. Because earlier in the episode, Harry's like, I told you so. It was too good to be true with this Mia, and you should have known. He was even like, hey, how did it work out for you with Miguel Prado and Lumen? Solid point, Harry. Cannot disagree. And again, this whole needle drop at the end with Michael C. Hall's actual band, Princess Goes. I lived for that. And I hope that everybody goes and streams his music. Give him a little bit of a bump there. So that way Michael C. Hall can truly be living in his era, both personally with his music and also professionally as a serial killer Dexter. So let me know all of your thoughts, theories, and predictions in the comments. We are now officially halfway through the season. There are 10 episodes as a whole, and I am fully satisfied. There's not a lot of criticism I have for this series as a whole, whereas with New Blood, I was just not that into it. And it took me a little while to get into Original Sin, and I've got to say, Patrick Gibson as the young Dexter really did it for me. And I loved the flashback to Original Sin. Of course, they had to pick one where Patrick Gibson is wearing that ridiculous wig. But that was sort of used as an explainer as to Dexter's first kill and why it happened. And the fact that he was actually defending his sister at that time, and he's always had a code. And really, Dexter taking out that first kill is not too dissimilar from Mia's brand, even though now we know that she kills because she likes it, not necessarily only because it has to do with men who are preying on women. She's a woman who likes to kill, what can we say? And I love Krysten Ritter in this role. I'm hoping we get to see more of her, but I'm also a little bit worried for her fate in prison at this point. I, of course, will be back again next week to cover episode 6, and I'm also covering some other TV shows here at the channel. If you like Dexter, I've got another dark show on tap, which is The Institute. It's on MGM+. It stars Mary Louise Parker, and it's adapted from a Stephen King novel. It is giving dark. It reminds me a little bit of Stranger Things, but it's also got that noir, moody sort of energy to it. So if you like Dexter, give that one a try. And while you're at it, you can add the MGM Plus to your Prime Video subscription and binge the show From while you're there. I cannot wait to cover From when it comes back for a season 4. Such an underrated mystery box TV show. I am also covering The Buccaneers on Apple TV+, the complete opposite of Dexter, and along with that, The Summer I Turned Pretty on Prime Video, both of which lean very heavily into the love triangle. So if you're looking for a show to lighten up your whole TV vibe, one of those might be for you. Or if you're just into the darkness like me, go with The Institute. I really appreciate you tuning in with me for my Dexter coverage every week, and I will be back again soon with more TV talk. I am on a mission to become a full-time TV content creator, so every time you tune in with me, you like, you subscribe, you comment, it really helps me get one step closer to that goal. So thank you so much. Media Melanie, clicking off. But also allegedly doesn't want this to be known.